Hello and welcome back to another update. As I cover the latest developments throughout the front line in the Russo-Ukrainian war, we start out in the direction of Avdiivka, where we have this geolocated footage from Deep State map, which shows a Russian tank moving through Stepove before firing and getting hit by Ukrainian artillery here at the western outskirts of the village. However, this shows that the Russians now have control over this northern part of Stepove, and at the same time it shows that the Ukrainians are losing their grip on the village and likely only have a small presence in the southern outskirts of the village or none at all. We're seeing that this advance by the Russians is making them closer to capturing the village, which is very small, but the fighting has continued over it for many weeks, if not months by now. And this is a village that the Russians have failed to capture not just once but twice in this 2-year-long war. And with that, we see that there's continuous fighting in the Stepove direction, and we move on to the Novomykhailivka direction, where here we see that the Russians have managed to advance a bit further in a northern direction from the southwestern parts of Novomykhailivka as they attempt further to advance in this direction to gain better positions and widen the front here to the south of Novomykhailivka. After their failed attempts at getting a foothold and securing the town here to the southwest of Donetsk, it seems that there is an increasing interest in the Russian army to push further westwards, capturing Novomykhailivka, moving towards Konstantinivka, Pobieda, and Uledar here in the eastern parts of the Donetsk region. So we're seeing that the Ukrainian forces are being pressured mainly in the Novomykhailivka direction, but also in the direction of Herivka here to the north, which indicates that there is further progress towards the Konstantinivka Uledar direction, and we see continuous efforts by the Russians here in the north of Novomykhailivka as well to start pressuring the town from multiple directions. We saw first that the Russians launched attacks here to the east of the town and then to the south of it, both in the direction of the forest lines and getting a foothold in the southern parts of it, but then were pushed out by the Ukrainians launching counterattacks, pushing them out of the town. And now we're seeing the Russians pushing here in the northeastern part, attempting to get a better position here to the north, which would then allow them to pressure Novomykhailivka from 3 directions instead of 2 here to the south and to the east. On top of this, we have 2 significant developments. The first one is the Mobilization Bill, which was proposed by Ukrainian politicians after Zelensky requesting an additional 500,000 people. The bill failed to pass. The bill, which was introduced by the government in December, would toughen penalties for draft dodgers and lower the age of military service from 27 to 25 years old, but on Thursday was rebuffed by Ukrainian lawmakers. While the bill would also cut compulsory wartime service from an unlimited period to 36 months, the changes have been deeply divisive in the nation exhausted by fighting. And we see that the goal that Zelensky has of mobilizing 500,000 people to fight the Russians is being slowed down by the parliament not agreeing to these new bills. At the same time, we are still not seeing any signs of the further Western supports. The EU aid package and the US aid package have yet to pass. As such, we are seeing that the Ukrainians have had no significant increase in either manpower nor military aid since the start of their offensive. So we're seeing that the attrition that the Ukrainians are suffering and the recuperation that is supposed to take place after that is not succeeding. Therefore, we're seeing that the situation is becoming more difficult for the Ukrainians as time passes on, and the Ukrainians are heavily dependent on these aid packages for them to continue this fight, continue this war, and continue fighting the Russians. However, I'm not saying that the Ukrainians are very weak right now. They are not, because Zelensky saved up a lot of forces throughout the summer offensive. They didn't lose much of what they had. This means that the Ukrainians still have a lot of forces to fight, and they can definitely fight for a long time with these forces. However, if the fighting continues as is and there's no breakthrough in the mobilization or in the military aids coming to Ukraine, then the situation will just continue to deteriorate, and we'll continue seeing this 5-1 artillery advantage for the Russians, and we'll continue to see increased casualties for the Ukrainians compared to the Russians. The other piece of news is that the EU Commissioner has revealed details of a meeting in 2020 where the former US President Donald Trump refused to support Europe in the event of an attack. The US will never come to Europe's rescue if the region is attacked, and by the way, the defense alliance NATO is dead. That was apparently the message from former US President Donald Trump to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, during a summit in Davos in 2020. As such, we see that with the upcoming election season here in the United States, we're going to see that this election will have a huge impact, not just in the Ukraine war, but also when it comes to Europe as a whole and the entire world order, because the statements and position of Donald Trump in this situation is clear, and that is isolationism compared to interventionism. So interventionism is essentially the policy the US has driven for a long time now, and that is they interfere with world affairs so that it goes the way they want it to, like the Cold War, where they forced the Soviet Union to prevent further communist states from erupting, like the Vietnam War, the Korean War, etc. So we have seen these multiple battles taking place, which ended up with standoffs between, for example, the United States and China. That is the interventionism. It is much more riskier when it comes to world war powers facing off against each other, like we currently see in Ukraine. This is also part of the interventionist policy. Supporting Ukraine is one of that. And at the same time, we are seeing reports that Donald Trump also said that if he becomes president again, he will stop the funding, the aid to Ukraine. Then again, that is the isolationist policy, which is to stay out of world conflicts, stay out of world policies, and essentially isolate the United States from the rest of the world so that they can focus on their own problems, their own issues. Now that we're on this topic, what do you guys think about me covering the US election when the time comes? I've always been following it since pretty much since I knew it existed, and I have this whole setup in my mind already for all of these things. So let me know if you want me to cover the US election when the time comes around. I'll probably have to make a second channel for that, because from what I've heard is that it is very difficult to make YouTube videos on that topic because bam, a YouTube channel is deleted for no reason. But then again, I've been doing YouTube with the Ukraine war, but so far it's been fairly uneventful compared to others. Staying neutral helps a lot, I guess. But that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.